So we are now recording. So just be aware of that. So feel free to participate as much or as little as you like. I personally think that there's a huge amount of value in the diversity of our community, and how different yet somehow similar our stories are. So the first question that I'll pose to the group, for anyone who would like to kick us off, is for those of you who have received a formal diagnosis, what was that process like for you?
Want me to start?
Yes.
Okay. So I got my diagnosis 10 years ago when I was 60, and I really self-diagnosed. Like I'd been seeing psychologists, blah, blah, ever since I was 20. But how this came about was I went into a health food magazine and I picked up this thing called Living Now, and it had a 3-page excellent article called The Little Professor. And I'd never heard of Asperger's syndrome before, but reading it, there was like the self-recognition, and there was a phone number at the end, and I phoned that, and she said she would put me on to the only psychiatrist in Sydney able to diagnose women with autism. So I went to him. I was lucky that I got it bulk billed. In those days, psychiatrists did bulk bill. Now he charges $300, but you get a bit off Medicare, but it's still a big thing. If you're trying to struggle on the pension, that's a lot of money. And so when I went to him, he basically just diagnosed me in the hour that I was in there, just from my behaviour. But he didn't give me the diagnostic letter. I had to go back and try and get that out of the GP who'd I'd gone to ask her to refer me. She was not very sympathetic, and so that was a bit of a struggle. So for me, the biggest achievement was getting the diagnostic letter. So that was, and then I went back 10 years later because I was having issues at work. And so then he diagnosed me with ADHD. And that time I had to pay the $300 and get but I was working then, so that wasn't such a big an issue. He's not really at all helpful. He gave me that, but he just does the bare basics. And my impression is with him and other psychiatrists I've had the misfortune to deal with, that all they're interested in is being the smarty and doing the diagnosis. They don't want to tell you anything about the condition because he never has. And in fact, when I asked him this time, he stumbled. So I don't think they're interested in that. They've got other.
Did you find that was helpful for you? It sounds like a fairly straightforward process for you.
Yeah, look, when he said that that's what it is, I almost jumped up and punched the air and said hallelujah, because it was so much better than being borderline or schizophrenic or something else. It was much more manageable. And then straight away I got onto the internet and started researching it. And there was a woman in Sydney, a psychologist, who was running free sessions for adults with Asperger's, I think one Saturday a month. That was helpful because she was mainly going to the theory. And I feel what's happened to me, that I've lived my life in a bubble of dissociation, and suddenly that bubble's burst. And now at 72, I'm in the real world, still in a child head state with no home of my own, no money and all that sort of thing. So it's very frightening. But in a way, I'm glad this happened because it made me realise how powerful that dissociation is in cocooning. Because I had infant trauma. So I think that's probably when it happened. So how would I say it's helpful? Just in the identity, self-identity, that now I know who I am. Now I don't think there's something wrong with me. Well, there might be in some sense, but not in the shaming and all that horrible sense that there was before.
Okay. Thanks, Pam. So that was a fairly straightforward
yes.
process 10 years ago.
Yes.
Would anyone else like to share?
12 years ago. Sorry.
12 years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
How has it been for others? Would anyone else like to share?
I suppose I could go if you want.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I suppose coming from Pamela's experience, for me, it's been a little bit longer because I've had my diagnosis 21 years almost, coming up in April next year. Pretty much just similar to Pamela. I saw a paediatrician when I was younger. He just said to my parents, you better get your son checked for autism because he may have it. And my parents, coming from a European background, you know, didn't understand what it meant. Yeah, it was helpful because it's just the initial process of doing it, and was easy, and then not really finding out until much later in life, 16, getting the diagnosis that you have autism spectrum disorder.
Mm. So what did that mean to you at the time, those words, autism spectrum disorder?
That's a good question, Paul. Sorry if I'm umming and ahhing a lot.
That's okay.
It meant that I was going to be looked upon as someone unique. But going to a state school where you're trying to mix with neurotypical guys and girls was hard.
Mm.
A lot of bad things happened to me at school.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. School is a challenging experience for many of us. I'm seeing a lot of head nodding.
I had to juggle going to normal school and kind of special school as well, which kind of interfered with my VCE, hence why I didn't have enough units to finish.
So just so that everyone is clear on the rules here, if you would like to unmute yourself and jump in, and you are completely free to do that at any time if you have something to add to one of these stories. So don't wait for me to invite you. This is a discussion, not an interview. So feel free to jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, because I had a Zoom meeting earlier this morning and it wasn't working at all, so that was not good. Yeah, I got my diagnosis at 45, actually, yeah, Christmas in July, so tomorrow would be 3 years and 4 months ago, so yeah, but I'm in the States, so it costs money even though we have insurance, and it wasn't quite, I don't think it went over the $1,000 mark, but still, you know, copays were not cheap. I did meet the deductible that year and other years since for other things, but anyways, yeah, I really wanted to know for sure if I was on the spectrum. My son had got his diagnosis a couple years prior, and you know, with all the researching that, trying to understand it, and then it's like, huh, okay, well, I thought that was normal because I did that when I was a kid, or just certain things that he would do that, because my memories go way back. I don't know if anybody else has that where you remember things as a baby. So usually not some good things, but yeah. So I'm not sure where I was going with that. Just, oh, the process. Well, I had to go to my general practitioner, they call him a GP or whatever, and get a referral. And she referred me to a neurologist. And so then I had an intake with them, and then they set up appointments. It was like 2 appointments. It was supposed to be a total of 5.5 hours of testing, which turned out to be a lot longer because it just took me a lot longer to do. And I remember going in a few weeks later for the results, and I remember the neurologist, he was talking about executive function, and I was like, oh, so does that mean I don't have autism? And then he's like, oh no, you do. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I didn't know what the heck executive function was. I had never heard of it before. So that was sort of like, that's how I found out for sure. Yeah. So it was good. And it was kind of like, I'd spent all of that my life up through 45 trying to be like everybody else, and why can't I just snap out of it and just be like everybody else? And so that was kind of the disappointment, but then it was like once I start realizing, hey, there's other people like me and finding groups, it it really helped knowing I wasn't alone. So, yeah.
I found my story to be very similar to yours, Shauna, in that
Okay.
my daughter was diagnosed when she was 6. She's now nearly 10. And again, I looked at her behaviors as normal because they were my behaviors, and they weren't. so that prompted me to get my assessment done in a similar way to GP referral, and done privately. Very expensive, I might add to.
Oh, yeah.
But
Remember roughly how much, Dan?
it was 1,300. But like, I've just been made redundant via COVID, so I had the money, so it worked out rather well. Yeah, so I found the process really, I found the testing process quite strenuous. I actually went into shutdown for about 3 days afterwards. Couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. Because I'm also bipolar 2 as well, so that just triggered all sorts of things. I wouldn't want to do the testing again. It was way too stressful. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. It's certainly, it's a double-edged sword in that I can't mask anymore, knowing what I know now, and that's a whole new process in itself. But yeah, glad I'm here.
What did the actual testing process look like?
It was essentially an IQ test. So there's a lot of testing of my processing, because I have a lot of issues with my processing. So yeah, it was a lot of kind of, I guess, stress testing, like a CPU stress test. So I found myself with my head on the table, almost in tears through about half of it, because it was stressful. So yeah, essentially it was majority executive function testing, followed by standard tests and questionnaires they put myself and my wife through as well. And then from there, it was like similar to Shauna's. About 2-3 weeks later, I got the result, like 10-page report, and yeah, it was quite detailed and gave me a lot of answers.
That sounds really intense. Let's just stress you as much as possible to see how much you can take.
Yeah, there was a screen with a dot in a box, and they had me for 20 minutes. If you see the dot in the box, you had to press the button. Oh my gosh, that one just,
wow.
I thought I was going to pass out. It was awful.
Awful.
Yes.
You survived.
Yes, yes. Yes, definitely.
And what's it like now, Dan, to finally have that, I was going to say piece of paper, but it's more like 10-page report.
What's it like now? Well, I guess at the moment I'm unemployed due to COVID, so it's given me a good chance to actually really allow the mask to fall off good and proper. As I said, it's a double-edged sword, which I'm sure everyone here understands. That it's kind of, you're grateful that you can take that mask off, but then that has implications around the home and the acceptance that, you know, socially, that's why you've struggled, and maybe why you shouldn't push it so hard, because you end up masking naturally. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. It hasn't changed anything, but it's changed everything. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, I do stage acting, so my favorite play was Curious Incident of the Dog of the Nighttime, and I got cast in 5 neurotypical roles. So, and but I'm friends with the director, and so and our assistant director was autistic, so you know, we wanted to make sure we did the play right because it's about an autistic boy. So,
What a beautiful dog.
oh, this is Finnegan. He's a little love. Needs hugs.
Yeah,
I need hugs.
there's so much they give so much comfort. I've got one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if anyone thought that a diagnosis was not necessary for you. Not everyone chooses to get a formal diagnosis.
Yeah, I really felt like I couldn't. Here it's like people like, oh, you don't look autistic. Oh, no, you're fine. Just, you know, whatever, and you'll be fine. And it doesn't work that way for me. I need to know.
Yeah.
Of course, then I overshare and I over-explain everything, and people, you know, I probably break their necks because they're like, huh? And it's yeah, they just don't quite get it. And then I realized, oh yeah, females are different. So I mean, not that different, but yet, you know, like it's just I don't know. Socially is, I think we want to be social to some degree, but then usually have the saying the wrong thing. People like, that was rude, you know, or you find out later, oh, they're mad at me. Great. Just being honest, and yeah, that gets me in trouble. So
yeah, I know one of the most important things for me was just getting enough validation from a professional that I'm not just making the whole thing up myself.
Tell us about your story, Paul. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so briefly, I guess. So I guess for me, I read a book called Look Me in the Eye. I don't know if any of you have read that book.
No.
And the author was describing things to the reader as if the reader wouldn't understand why it was like that. And I'm like, isn't it obvious? So that was strange. Anyway, so I got about halfway through that book, and even though I'm a very different person to the author, there was so much similarity that I basically couldn't ignore the serious possibility anymore. And then I literally picked up the phone and called Aspergers Victoria and attended a meeting the next day, joking that I diagnosed myself yesterday on the internet, expecting that would not be respected at all. And instead, the response was, "Welcome to the tribe."
Oh, lovely.
Like, hang on. No. Did you not hear me? I haven't got a diagnosis. I did an online test that said maybe, and then I'm just attending a group. This doesn't mean anything. But there must have been something that they knew that I didn't know. Anyway, so
I did that internet test back in I guess my late 30s. I'm 49 now. I think it's been over 10 years ago, and it came back very likely. But then it's like, you know, people say, oh, don't believe everything you read on the internet. So I dismissed it, you know, immediately, like, oh, okay, dismiss it. And should have listened. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was something inexplicable about that particular group, though, on that very first meeting. It's just the quality of the conversation that we're having was just on a completely different wavelength to other conversations. I mean, we had a half an hour discussion on what to do when you go to the supermarket and the thing you've been asked to buy isn't there. So anyway, it was a I see Matt laughing in the middle there. Maybe some of you can relate to that.
I had to unmute myself so you could hear my laugh.
You remember that too, Paul. I remember that night very well.
Mm.
No, I was empathizing with you, Paul, about the grocery store.
Yeah, you've had a similar experience, have you, Sparky?
Oh, this morning.
This morning. Yep.
My gosh, I would love to go to a group like that, considering my current solution is to call my mother if I run into some sort of issue like that.
Yeah, there was someone explaining a story where he was buying napkins or serviettes for his daughter's birthday party, and he bought paper towel instead, and she was really upset because she wanted like little napkins with little, balloons on them or something. He's like, it's the same thing, isn't it?
They're better actually. Napkins they're pointless.
Tia, I see you've unmuted yourself. Did you want to share something?
I don't know. I guess my process has been a bit longer maybe than some. My sister got quite ill when she hit puberty, and she had a lot of issues for many years, and they threw all kinds of different diagnoses at her, which were all wrong, and of course just made everything worse. And then after I got married and had my first kid, I had a lot of postpartum issues and stuff. So I was having a lot of depression, anxiety kind of problems, and everything for quite a few years. My oldest is just about 18, just about 18 now. So it's been a long time. And even when he was really little, I could tell there was something not quite right or not usual in some of his behaviors. And I brought it up to the people like at the little kids groups and all of that you go to, and I was brushed off constantly. And it's like, well, I guess they're the professionals. So I never really did anything about it. And that was a big problem, caused a lot of issues in our life. He's moved out now and we don't have any contact with him at the moment. So that sucks. Would have been nice if people had listened to me sooner. I also lost both my siblings. I'm assuming due to misdiagnoses and just how hard everything is. So it would have been really, really good if people had actually listened sooner. So yeah, I was looking into different things because I'd be having these, I guess what they're meltdowns, and I just assumed they were like these horrible panic attacks, and except that they would go away and then I'd feel fine again. So I didn't really know what exactly was happening. It didn't sound quite like the way everyone said panic attacks were supposed to be. And I looked into hypersensitivity, and that seemed to kind of fit. And then one of Yosemite Sam's videos came up in my YouTube thing, and I was watching that. I'd already kind of thought maybe, because we're looking into my oldest son again, trying to get some things sorted with him. So I was thinking, yeah, I got Tony Atwood's book, and I was reading that, and he had a little tiny bit in there about girls with autism, and it's like, that kind of actually sounds like me, but I didn't think much of it until this video came up in my thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's me. So I started looking into it more, and even then it was really hard. I was trying to go through therapists and stuff to get assessments and everything. And I live in a small town, so we have a lot of telepsychiatry. And the one psychiatrist told me within about 5 minutes I couldn't possibly be autistic because I was looking at him. And I wasn't. I was looking at myself in the corner of the screen to make sure I wasn't swinging my chair.
Yeah.
So, but we ended up actually going for the paid thing because it was 3 to 5 year wait if I wanted to go with it being covered. And we ended up finding a place through Guelph, Ontario, that would do it for $400 for us virtually instead of 4,000 other places. And that was enormously more affordable for us. So me and my son got ours through that, and then we're going to be getting my daughter. She's too young to have the virtual one, so we have to bring her in for hers. But he gets his diagnosis on Saturday, so we'll find out how that all goes.
And what was the actual process like of what the assessment was like for you?
It was actually really, really good. I didn't have a horrible experience like those other two there. I can't believe how hard that would have been. It would have been awful. I had 2 different people I talked to over 3 different sessions, and they were really, really great. The place that we went through hires only ASD or ADHD staff. So they really know what to look for. So that's why I was really comfortable doing it virtually instead of in person. And yeah, she was great. She was very, very friendly, very easy to talk to. I finally felt like I wasn't being brushed away or shoved down the cracks for once in my life. It was really, really good.
Yeah, to be understood is an amazing feeling, and you sort of take it for granted that it doesn't happen, and then when it does finally happen, it's like, wow, this is incredible.
Almost scary.
How is it possible that someone isn't dismissing me right now? What's wrong with this situation?
Yeah, it's nice when people acknowledge your struggles. Like when I was in that play, they had one of the parts was like a strobe effect to simulate, us an autistic going into overload. And my director, I'm like, I can't, I'm expected to walk. And see, she made an accommodation. She's like, no, you're going to go backstage. I'm like, thank you. So that was, yeah, much needed.
Penny, I see you've put a comment in the chat. Would you like to share anything about where you're at the moment? Completely optional.
Yeah. So I've only done the online test, and I'm waiting to find someone that can diagnose me. And I'm, the doctor didn't take me seriously. I think you just need a psychologist anyway, because you're thinking that. So he's referred me to one of the ones that I had on my list of people who do adult diagnoses, because I'm hoping that they can see if I am or not. But I was scoring higher than those who were already diagnosed. So I'm like, oh, and everything on there seems so fucking normal to me. Sorry, but like that's my normal. I'm looking at that going, that's been my whole life. Like, how is that? Like, if that's not normal, what is normal? I don't know what normal is now. Like I'm looking at all the traits and I'm going, but so how do other people? I don't understand. How do other people look at the same thing? Like, yeah. So I'm hoping that they don't dismiss me, and I hope it's not a long wait, and I hope it's not expensive, but I don't know yet. Yeah.
The place in Guelph does provide services worldwide except for the US. So if anyone happens to be interested, they work pretty good and they do provide services worldwide. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Do you have a link for them? I'll have a look into them.
Sure. I'll see if I can type it in here.
Joanna is waving, I think, or something. Would you like to say?
Oh, that's a raised hand. I feel really awkward cutting in without like an intro or something.
That's okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. I'm using my phone, so I'm not sure how, the microphone works on here. I just wanted to say I was thinking of getting diagnosed, and then I called around my area, and the responses I was getting were so depressing. Like the first 3, they were so confused every time I said it's for me, the diagnosis that I wanted to get. And they were like, we don't deal with this. We don't know. But the confusion in general was already kind of like, I don't know, just kind of made me like, okay, is this worth it? And then, yeah, so now I'm just a little bit, not motivated to do it. But I know there's, and also I'm worried about the fact that I might find somebody who does do it and then they don't diagnose me with autism when I've done all this research and I know I have it, just that like, that, I guess it's the perfectionism. I'm not sure what to call it, but it's really just makes me not want to even try, you know. And also at this point, I've done so much research that I pretty much know sure I have it. And, you know, I don't even know if it's worth it to do it. I mean, I at the very beginning, I was like, okay, if I'm going to say I have autism, I need to get the diagnosis, just like most people are doing it. And just in general in life, I've been kind of easing up on that kind of perfectionism. Just knowing that I have the tendency to be like that kind of makes it easier for me to go, you know, you have it, it's okay. But it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to let go of. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's just something I've been working on, and it's something that's, you know, I'm able to do now. But it's helped that I've connected with people that have autism, and I'm okay. There's a group of people. We have extreme similarities. I forget who did it, but there was a lady who interviewed about 70 autistic women who got diagnosed with autism. And she had this list of things that all these women were generally saying that they experienced. And a lot of it was like a death, you know, like, why are we here? And I'm like, oh my goodness, I felt like this all my life and I could never connect with people. I remember when I was like 6 years old, finding out about God. And I remember constantly thinking, yeah, but where did God begin? Like, where does he begin, you know? And constantly, like, at 6 years old, I don't think that's normal for a kid. And I was just like, what about where, you know? So, yeah, that's just a couple of things of, you know, why I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. But then somebody mentioned somebody in Canada who is, you know, aware of, like, I forget who it is, but, you know, I don't want to go in and do it unless I know somebody who knows what they're doing, you know, especially because I'm a girl, and girls, I think, get misdiagnosed the most. You know, that's just kind of my, in terms of, am I even gonna go out and try to get a diagnosis? At this point, I'm like half and half, you know. If I had a family and people to prove it to, that'd be one thing, but at this point, it's just me, and I'm, you know, I just don't know if I had the motivation.
It's scary to try and go and get a diagnosis when you've been put off and brushed off so many times, especially when you're spending money.
Yeah, exactly. And like Crystal just said, I was diagnosed BPD, which is like extremely common for girls with Asperger's, which I might actually have that, but it's just like this huge thing that would be nice to know if I had it before, you know. But at least we're living here. Yeah. I know I read this quote recently. It's I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something along the lines of, be a nice person, don't waste your time trying to prove it. And that's kind of where I'm at with my Asperger's. It's like, you know what, I'm just gonna be me, and whoever believes. It's one of those, like, those who matter don't mind, those who mind don't matter. But I do want to represent, I do want to get it out there, but at the same time, it's very draining to do that, you know. So it's one of those like a balancing act.
I was very lucky to have my husband to help me out with all that stuff, getting it together and getting ready and making the phone calls and all of that, because I would never have been able to do it by myself.
Yeah, that's so true. And then I think another thing that helped me was finding this group, finding Paul's channel, finding just a couple of different channels, and just being in that atmosphere of people who say all these things that validate so many things from my, you know, my whole entire life up to this point. It makes it easier for me to just feel like I fit in and not needing to get that validation outside of myself anymore so much. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm like, well, if I get the diagnosis, I get it. But at this point, I'm just gonna try to start with what I have and move forward with that, you know, as big of a project as it is, because it's so hard to know who you are if you don't know who you are, you know. But yeah, it's just something to start with.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what difference you think getting a diagnosis makes or has made. So I know it's easy to sort of think that a diagnosis is going to change things, and sometimes it does, and sometimes even though you want it to, it actually makes no difference, and it's like, great, well, now I've got a diagnosis, now what?
Yeah, I know. You know, I think it's that kind of, like I was saying, I'm in the process right now of just letting stuff go, and a lot of it is people, and a lot of it is, well, a lot of it's people, but also who I was with those people in general. And I think doing that helps with letting go of the fact, like, that I don't absolutely need 100% this diagnosis, like to know that I have it. Does that make sense? Kind of just letting things kind of not needing an exact answer, basically, you know? And a little bit of that is like OCD, I want to say, maybe a perfectionism. I don't know what to call that, but I did have that in the very beginning, and just the more interactions I've had with people, the more I learn, and just the more comfortable I feel about, you know, where I've like diagnosed myself, basically, the less I feel the need to do it, I guess. And yeah, honestly, I don't think it'll change anything for me at this point. Like at this point, I would only do it to be like, yeah, here, mom, I told you, here's this is it. There's a diagnosis, you know, but I don't need to do that anymore. It's like, she's going to believe me if she's believe me. It's not, you know, there's even a reason, like, I think you said on your videos, Paul, that even when you have that paper and you show people, there's going to be people that still are going to be like, yeah, whatever. You just found somebody who's a kook, or, you know, it's like, there's always going to be that. So I don't know at this point.
I have a friend who has basically self-diagnosed after many years of issues and stuff, and she feels the same way. She doesn't feel like she needs that for any, like, the actual formal diagnosis for anything. It's enough for her to be able to feel that, you know, she finally can understand herself better. She doesn't need it to prove anything to anyone else right now. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know both sides. In the very beginning, I was like, yeah, right, I have to have this. No way I'm going to tell people if I don't know. And then just slowly, like, honestly, I don't know when it just clicked for me. I was like, you know what? These are my people. They get me. I get them, like, whatever. Like, it's just a piece of paper, you know? Yeah. So I get it. I get both sides of that, you know? So I'm like, whenever I address somebody who's like, no, I need to have it, I get that feeling. I remember that very vividly. But yeah.
So what do you think? Is a diagnosis necessary? Was one necessary for you?
Oh, definitely for me. I don't need it. Sorry, I'm not sure who you're
asking. Yeah, sorry, you can't see me, Joanna, but I'm just asking the whole group.
Okay.
Yes, it's essential. Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately.
I needed it too. I'm very unsure of myself. I feel like I don't know if I'm doing the right thing unless it comes from an outside source telling me I have, because I always feel like I'm doing it wrong. So, like, even though I was 100% sure I was autistic from the research I did, I needed that outside professional diagnosis for my own peace of mind. And even though I'm not going to go and shove it in the faces of all the therapists and psychologists that I've seen over the years, I'm still like, yes, I was right, you were wrong. And it's kind of a boost for me. So yeah, I kind of need it.
Yeah, I definitely needed it too. It was too many invalidating people. Just even now, it's like you'd think at 49 I would have gotten stronger and just told people off, and then getting more. This year has been the year of not putting up with certain people, especially here in the States. So, especially my town, a little scary sometimes, but yeah. So, yeah.
Crystal, I noticed you took yourself off mute. Is that because you would like to share something?
Yeah, but I just forgot your last question.
You can share from wherever you like, but I can repeat the last question if you prefer.
Yeah, I was thinking of your last one, and then I forgot it.
The last question is getting a formal diagnosis important for you?
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say it was for me when I got mine. In fact, I had to get evaluated twice, because I think, like I wrote earlier, I had many diagnoses growing up, and I was always medicated. And the time I moved to Portland, Oregon, like 5 years ago, like when things got really hard, I had to go to another doctor, and I noticed every time I had any change, they were always throwing another medicine at me, like, oh, it's bipolar, you need to try lithium, it's this. And when I moved to Portland and I told them, I just felt like I was kind of like lucked out with the people I ran into, but started describing the sensory and how I was feeling like I was shutting down. That's the first time I got evaluated for autism, and that was like kind of like more like surprise, like, another one, are you sure? And after a couple years of that, then I went to get services and I had to go get evaluated again, and I was really glad for that. But what really helped me was when I got that diagnosis was it was time for me to get off the other medication because they were pretty sure I didn't have them. And that was a really big deal to me because I just those other diagnoses didn't feel right. The medication made me feel horrible. It was just piling more stuff on me. And now I'm not on anything. I might have some issues here and there, especially like depression and stuff, but knowing most of my, like, I guess the autism things, like the sensory things, like I'm not going crazy. I don't need to take Zyprexa or something heavy because of something like I got these tinted lenses or wear earplugs. It makes a huge difference, or I need to stay home today, and just knowing that, and then also the doctors knowing that before they throw things at me, just that's what really made a big difference for me.
Hi, fellow Oregonian. I'm in Southern Oregon, so nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm on the Oregon coast too.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I was going to say that to Crystal. My family's up near you and across the river.
Oh, awesome.
Awesome. So what did the actual process look like for you then, Crystal? Did you get a referral or something, or like, and then what was the assessment like?
Yeah, they gave me a referral. It took me a long time to finding someone because of the way the insurance works here. I ended up paying out of pocket just because we weren't really finding anything. So I found like one of the universities, so it only cost me $350, which is cheap compared to what I was finding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they referred me, and I had one of the grad students who works close teachers just give me a ton of questions. I know I've been through many evaluation assessments before, but this testing was just really different. Like before was always about moods and very much shorter. This was so much longer. Like it felt like several hours, and I went home a week, came back the next weekend. It was another several hours, very detailed. And I noticed when her report, like I noticed she was watching me so closely that it actually got me nervous too. But she even wrote down everything I complained about, like, oh, the lights are bright, or it's a little loud, or she noticed when I suddenly couldn't concentrate on the questions. She noticed that I think she even wrote about how my voice sounds, how I dress. And it seemed like those were kind of clues towards things. So that was my first evaluation experience of how it went. And then my second one, which was for here, is I was going to vocational rehab to help adults with disabilities find jobs. It was much shorter. It was like one day, several hours, but I think because she took some of the results of the other test. But yeah, they asked my mom questions. They had me have a take-home form. There was she seemed like she was more poking me, probing me, like a little bit more, like I felt like someone else, I think it was Dan, that said like stress you out more. So I felt that test was about, but I was like, I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I got fired so many times, but that process, I mean, at the end, that was kind of interesting too, because she found like came back to like, okay, you have autism spectrum disorder, and then maybe some other things like the depression, anxiety that I feel like is very common. But I don't know, to me it helped that there was two tests that said autism spectrum.
So it sounds like it was a bit hard to find a place, but once you found it, your experience was pretty good.
Yeah, once the things were going in that direction, and the people were known to diagnose or specialize or are more aware of these things.
Yeah, because one of my biggest fears, and some others have said this in the group as well, is getting a professional that doesn't know as much as I do, or that feels like this was a useless, expensive waste of time, and now I've got even more confusing data because I wanted a professional's opinion, and now I've got a professional's opinion, but now I don't even think that it's valid.
Can be
Yeah, that was
crushing.
definitely a fear. Sorry.
Yeah.
A few people,
yeah.
I think a few people wanted to respond to that. Do you want to have Crystal and then Pam and then Tia?
Oh, I was just saying it was definitely a fear of mine, of because I went through so many doctors before and other diagnoses. So that was all I was agreeing to that.
Yeah, cool.
You know, I was going to say that while I've been listening to this, especially now, let me see. Sorry, I forgot your name. The man who got the 10-page report. I'm thinking, oh, I'd like one of those, because I've only got like a 1.5 page letter, and then the second diagnosis of the ADHD. I think that's half a page. But look, I'm happy with that. I don't want to. As I'm getting older, I'm thinking, I don't want to put myself through any bad stuff that I don't have to do. Like, I mean, my time might sound, I'm not trying to sound negative, but my time on this earth is limited. I just want to maximize the most of it from now. No more suffering, no more self-inflicted masochism. So even though I'd like the 10 pages, I'll skip it. Yeah, that's all I want to say.